Fast or slow reps, which is better for building muscle? Can you tell which is better for muscle hypertrophy? This is the question on the minds of many bodybuilders, and if you really want to know which is more effective, stick around until the end of this video, and let's find out together. First, we need to start with something called repetition rate. As the name implies, this is the actual term used by researchers to describe how fast you perform repetitions for a given exercise. As I've mentioned before, most exercises have an eccentric phase and a concentric phase. The eccentric phase refers to the part of the movement in which the target muscle is lengthened. For example, your biceps is in the eccentric phase when you lower the weight. The muscle lengthens while maintaining tension to prevent the weight from going into free fall. The concentric phase, on the other hand, refers to the phase in which the target muscle shortens. For example, your biceps is in the concentric phase when you lift the weight during the exercise. The muscle must shorten with enough force to overcome gravity. It's important to understand these phases so that you can adjust your cadence to meet your training goals. When you perform faster repetitions, you can usually lift more weight. On the other hand, slower reps result in much longer eccentric contractions, which leads to more muscle fatigue. This is important because your choice of rep rate can significantly affect the type of stimulus your muscles receive. Fast repetitions may be more effective for developing maximum strength and explosive strength, while slow repetitions may be better for developing muscular endurance and motor control. It is important to consider the objective of the workout when choosing the cadence. So today we're going to look at what science has to say about which of these strategies is better for building muscle. Before you start, subscribe to the channel and leave a like to stay on top of the fitness world and learn everything you need to get healthy and get more results from your workouts. Here we go. In a study published in the Journal of Strength, researchers had participants perform 3 sets of 6 to 10 repetitions to failure with a traditional repetition time of 1 to 2 seconds for each concentric or a slow concentric contraction of 10 seconds, followed by a slow eccentric contraction of 4 seconds. This study is fundamental because it provides a direct comparison between different repetition times and their effects on muscle growth. The methodology used helps to eliminate bias and provide more reliable results. There are methods considered to be among the best for the highest quality measurement. One of them is called the biopsy method. Using this type of test, the researchers found that at the end of the study, the traditional training group increased their leg muscle fiber cross-sectional area by 26% in slow twitch type 1 fibers and 33% in type 2 fibers. The slow twitch group increased only 6% in type 1 and 15% in type 2. This clearly shows the difference that repetition rate can make in muscle development. However, it is important to remember that biopsy is an invasive method and may not be applicable in all studies or for all individuals. Based on these results, we can say that faster reps are actually better for muscle growth compared to very slow reps. Take a look at this study known as time under tension. Basically, it refers to how many seconds it takes from the beginning to the end of your sets. So it includes time for both the concentric and eccentric phases, which most people believe means that the longer the total time you're under tension, the more muscle you'll build. And that's just not true. This goes to show how important it is not to cling to popular concepts without first checking their scientific validity. For example, taking 6 seconds to perform a dumbbell curl was found to be no better for muscle growth than taking 2 seconds. Another study found that performing repetitions at a fixed speed of 4 seconds per repetition, rather than a faster speed, led to a decrease in both muscle activation and training volume. This shows that repetition speed is not an isolated factor in optimizing muscle growth. Other aspects, such as total load and execution technique, are also crucial. We have a meta-analysis that looked at 8 different studies and found no statistically significant difference between cadence and muscle growth. However, if you look at the effect sizes of these studies, they indicate that there was a trend towards greater muscle growth for those who trained at a faster repetition rate. There is a possibility that the duration of the study training was not long enough to detect a statistically significant difference between the groups. This highlights the need for long-term studies to better understand the effects of different repetition rates on muscle growth. That's why I believe this meta-analysis still indicates that faster times really are better for building muscle. In addition, the 8 studies reviewed in the meta-analysis had many other limitations. One is that all of the studies were conducted on untrained individuals. One could question whether untrained individuals have the necessary exercise technique coordination and motivation to produce maximum muscle activation when performing a faster exercise, which is, incidentally, the main way to achieve a faster pace and increase muscle growth. Participants' experience can significantly affect results, as trained individuals may respond differently to training variables. So why can faster reps be effective for muscle growth? Well, the first reason is that studies show that slowing down repetitions reduces the amount of weight that can be lifted. On the other hand, speeding up reps can increase the number of reps you can lift for a given weight. Anyone who has ever lifted weights knows that when you decrease your reps, you usually have to decrease the weight or the number of reps you do. What does this mean? It means that the total amount of mechanical stress you can put on your muscle fibers is less with slow repetitions compared to fast repetitions. The ability to lift heavier loads with fast reps can provide a more robust stimulus for muscle growth. Not only is this worse from a muscle building standpoint, but a meta-analysis published in the Journal of Sports Medicine found that reducing strength gains leads to reduced strength gains. This means that you won't be able to lift as much weight in future sets as you would if you maintained a regular repetition rate. All of this reduces the amount of mechanical tension overload you can produce, which limits muscle growth. Another benefit of fast reps is that they result in higher levels of muscle activation than slow reps. Efficient muscle activation is essential for maximizing muscle growth and adaptation to training. This is related to Henneman's size principle, which states that muscle fibers are recruited in order of size, roughly from slow twitch to fast twitch, to meet the demands of force production. In simpler terms, slow twitch fibers tend to be active most of the time you're exercising, while fast twitch fibers only come into play when the going gets really tough. Therefore, by performing your reps explosively, your fast twitch fibers will be active throughout the set. As fast twitch fibers are typically more associated with visible muscle growth, this knowledge is essential for anyone looking to optimize muscle hypertrophy. On the other hand, if you choose to do slow reps, your fast twitch fibers will not be activated until later in the set, when the slow twitch fibers cannot produce enough force to increase resistance. Therefore, slower reps provide less muscle-building stimulation to your fast twitch fibers. Therefore, it is important to balance the speed of the reps to ensure that all muscle fibers are adequately stimulated during the workout. By now, you're probably wondering if there isn't scientific research to suggest that slow eccentric contractions are better for muscle growth. In fact, some studies indicate that slow eccentric contractions produce more muscle growth than faster eccentric contractions. Because of this, many people believe that slowing down will lead to more muscle growth, which isn't necessarily the case. According to the meta-analysis we just talked about, the problem is that many of the studies that support slower contractions in the eccentric portion of the descent do so in isolation, without also taking into account the opposite concentric contraction. Furthermore, almost all of the studies that show that slow eccentrics are better use some form of eccentric overload. This highlights the complexity of the muscle response to different repetition rates. Scientists use equipment that increases the load during the eccentric phase and decreases it during the concentric phase. Therefore, there is more resistance when lowering the weight than when lifting it. If you have access to this type of equipment, then yes, it is beneficial to perform slower eccentric contractions. But since most of us don't have access to this type of equipment and primarily use dumbbells, cables, and machines that maintain a constant amount of tension as you increase or decrease the weight load, slower eccentric contractions won't necessarily help you build more muscle. You can overload the eccentric contraction and benefit from slower repetitions. This approach must be adapted to individual conditions and available equipment. One way to understand this is with the bench press. Here, you would use a very heavy weight with your partner watching you, and you would lower the weight very slowly toward your chest. As soon as it reaches your chest, your partner should forcefully lift the weight off you while you push it down. This creates an eccentric overload, because you're lowering the entire weight to your chest, but you're only lifting part of it back up because your partner is helping you. In this situation, you are going slower on the way down. Another way to take advantage of slower reps is the 2-for-1 technique. This technique can be used in a variety of exercises to maximize eccentric overload. With this technique, you perform the lifting portion of an exercise with 2 limbs, while performing the lowering portion with only 1 limb at a slow pace. This again results in a high eccentric overload. An example of this would be doing leg extensions. You could lift your weight with both legs, but lower it with only one. You can use many different machines to perform the same technique, as long as the right and left sides are connected to a single weight load. You can alternate between doing a bench press with dumbbells on the way up, and then a fly with the same weight load on the way down. This approach can be especially useful for more advanced individuals who are looking for new training stimuli. Keep in mind that if you're a beginner, I don't recommend focusing on eccentric overload, because beginners generally don't have the motor control to use this technique correctly. Also, if you're a beginner, you don't really need these techniques because you can make sufficient gains with regular training. But if you're advanced, these techniques can be beneficial, and the slower repetitions can help you increase muscle growth. Even for those who are advanced, it's a good idea not to overdo these techniques because they are very taxing on the body, which is why overdoing them can lead to recovery problems and possibly injury. Balance and moderation are key to avoiding injury and maximizing gains. So to figure out the best type of reps for muscle growth, here's what I recommend as a general strategy. Spend most of your sets performing the concentric phase explosively. You're likely to increase muscle activation more than you would if you did it slowly. The data also shows that a faster concentric can increase strength gains, even if you try to explode during the concentric. This doesn't mean that the weight will move fast if you're using a reasonable amount of weight. The reps may still feel very slow, especially during the last few reps of each set. That's okay, because it's all about intention. Your intention should be to overpower the weight with as much force as possible, regardless of how fast the weight actually moves. Intention and technique are fundamental to effective training. Although there is no direct, high-quality study proving that faster concentric contractions lead to more muscle growth, there is evidence that working in bursts increases both muscle activation and strength gains, making it more likely that your muscles will grow faster over time. That's why I recommend performing the lift or bend portion of each contraction with maximum force. What have we learned in today's video? Although there are advantages to training with either fast or slow reps, you can combine the two. A combination of the two is ideal if your primary fitness goal is to maximize muscle growth. Diversity in training approach can provide a more complete and effective stimulus. But which is the best option for hypertrophy? As we've seen, both slow and fast reps provide great benefits in terms of hypertrophy. Use slow reps with isolated exercises with the goal of contracting as many fibers as possible and safely reaching failure. Ultimately, all forms of using slow and fast reps are productive for building muscle. The most important thing to understand is that there is no absolute rule when it comes to repetition speed. Remember that no matter what speed you use, the quality of the execution of the exercise will not be affected. Faster reps don't mean doing the exercise uncontrollably, limiting your range of motion and dropping the weight, especially on the way down. Quality of execution and safety should always be a priority in any training program. If you do slow or fast reps, leave a comment below with your results and experience, and like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any Fit Fundamentals videos.